Onyx 12 Mike Oscar, runway 27, clear for takeoff.
Hello and welcome to the Calm Cockpit podcast. I'm your co-host, Geeta Brown.
And I'm also your co-host, John Niehaus. Well, our first episode doesn't launch until January 22nd next year. We wanted to take a moment to introduce you to our brand new podcast. As we said, the Calm Cockpit. You may remember me as the former program director of the National Association of Flight Instructors and the original host of the NAFI More Right Rudder podcast. Check it out. It's still going if you haven't listened to it. I'm also an ATP-rated pilot and experienced CFI with nearly 20 years of flying experience. We all know that life comes with its challenges, many of which become magnified in a demanding environment of aviation. We wanted to start this podcast to address the issues that so many don't talk about. Pilot stress, performance anxiety, fatigue, and so much more. While these are not groundbreaking topics, what makes Calm Cockpit different is that we'll be providing crucial and tested techniques and strategies to overcome these issues and increase your performance as a pilot and in life. We want to improve your abilities, make your training easier, and have you fly safer. With all the social media remedies to stress and anxiety, I don't know about you, but it's flooding all of my social media feeds. We're going to test them on ourselves so that you don't have to. This has already led to a story I'm not super proud of, but I'm dying to share about stress-reducing bed sheets.
So many questions about stress-reducing bed sheets.
It's true.
Stay tuned. Yeah, when John approached me about doing this podcast, for me, it was just an automatic yes. I'm a music educator and therapeutic yoga specialist, and I've had this daily yoga practice since high school, which is like 30 years of practice. So I really maybe had a little bit of an ego and considered myself pretty resilient and self-aware, but I really got that major ego smackdown when I developed a crippling fear of flying in my 40s. I mean, it was so bad, even the sight of a commercial aviation flight going up overhead made my heart race and my stomach clench, and I knew I had to address the issue. So long story short, this led to that general aviation discovery flight during which I nervously took the controls after much coaxing, and I completely fell in love with aviation. And I am now a student pilot. I've soloed, and I'm working on my solo cross countries this winter. Woohoo!
Hooray.
Yay! So John and I had this meeting of the minds when I appeared on an episode of the podcast. He was talking about the More Right Rudder podcast, and we were talking about sort of the parallels in flight education and me as a music educator and all of that. And our dream team kind of fell into place.
Yeah, I mean, we fundamentally believe that the time is right to have a fully transparent and helpful conversation about pilot well-being. And as a pilot, I understand half the time we don't want to talk about it. But we want to bring you the best and time-tested evidence-based strategies that will not only make us more effective and safe aviators, but also help us build resilient lives and ones that feel good to not just us, but our family as well.
Yeah, I really think that it's a primary responsibility of each person and aviator to maximize their exploration of self-knowledge. And I also really fundamentally believe that there is no reason why our high performance outcomes as aviators in our careers or weekend flying ever needs to come at the expense of physical and mental well-being. I really believe that with the right training, with the right attitude, and as John has often said, managing, that we can handle the rigors of our flying life while actually improving our well-being. I'm tired as a therapeutic yoga person of hearing that we have to have it all and that constant push that we do in society. And I'd really rather have conversations with you, John, and with our listeners and our eventual guests, and focus on taking responsibility for what matters, which is largely what goes on inside our own heads and inside our own bodies. Our health, our mental well-being, our relationships. These are all things that we can take responsibility for and quite honestly manage better and feel better so that we can show up with this clear and calm mind that is ready and resilient to handle any of the challenges that come our way.
I've heard you describe yourself as a recovering perfectionist. And
oh, yeah, that came out quick, huh?
frankly, in aviation, that's a rarity because I haven't figured out how to recover from that yet. And most of my pilot friends haven't either. And what does that do? It just adds to the stress every time you go flying because you're looking for that perfect flight. And let's face it, the perfect flight really doesn't exist. And so getting over that is important. And if you're a pilot, you deal with these kinds of stress in normal life, but then it gets exponentially magnified just in doing what you do in the air. It's important and it comes with its own risks. And so, you also end up with things like career dependent check rides, job changes, traveling away from family during, regular life, but also during birthdays and holidays and all of those other important things. Certainly we know that the FAA has started introducing new mental health rules and that's wonderful. But as a pilot, I'm sure you can also agree that there's a little bit of skepticism built in there. I'm still afraid to tell the FAA. Sometimes I feel sad. Sometimes I'm stressed. Sometimes these things happen. And so, how do we deal with that? We have to realize these things, but we also have to have strategies in place to mitigate them. And so this podcast, we hope, is like free training for your mind.
I love that. Free training for your mind, for your life. And also, I want to add to that also a place where we can sort of normalize these conversations and just make it part of the general aviation landscape, both in commercial and sort of hobby weekend flying. Although I wouldn't call flying on a weekend a hobby. We know once you start flying a plane, you're a pilot, you're an aviator, and it becomes really a lifestyle. And I think having a place where people can come not only for information that we provide, that our guests provide, but where we can all just be sort of enriched by the conversation and candidness around this topic could maybe serve some folks. So if you have ever felt like you want to perform better, but are tired of sacrificing your sanity, or if you want to achieve those dream aviation goals, but are tired of feeling like it comes at the expense of your personal relationships, or especially, I'm looking at you if you're about to hit that wall of burnout and you're living on stress, caffeine, and grit, stay tuned to the Calm Cockpit podcast. Our first full episode drops on January 22nd next year. And John and I are going to do a deeper dive into both of our personal stories and share sort of our top tips, I guess, for what has worked for us to both enhance our performance, but also our overall well-being. So please like the show, look for us in your podcast library to drop on Wednesday, January 22nd. And until then, you can follow us on Instagram at Calm Cockpit Podcast. On Facebook, guess where? Say it with me, people. Calm Cockpit Podcast. And please also consider sharing this with your favorite aviation buddy who is also intrigued about personal growth or whom you've had these similar conversations. Invite them to follow the show because we want to bring all of us into this conversation together.
If you want to hear some crazy stories from a pilot who just wants to go to a check ride feeling comfortable and somehow bought stress relieving bed sheets, listen to the podcast. but always remember that you're capable of having your highest goals realized while enjoying a life of abundant health, energy, positive relationships, and of course, safer flying. Walk into your next check ride with less stress and save your money from the bed sheets and exceed your own expectations. Until next time, fly smart and stress less.
Departure is Airbus 321, traffic holding crossing runway 33 left 3 clear.